Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're so happy to see everyone. Folks are coming in and joining us for our Partnership Spotlight webinar. We're excited to be here with you today. We're just going to wait another 30 seconds or so for everyone to jump on in, then we'll get started. All right. Welcome and thank you for joining us today in our Partnership Spotlight webinar. Today, we're going to have the amazing opportunity to learn from the journey of two UnboundEd partners, Darcia from Springfield Public Schools, which is in Springfield, Massachusetts, and Rhonda from Synergy Academies in Los Angeles, California. During our time together today, our hope is really that each one of us can identify where we all are on our professional learning journey and consider how a partnership with UnboundEd would elevate this work. My name is Jen Kreisen, and I'm going to be co-facilitating our time together today. I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and formerly I was the Executive Director of Professional Development in a St. Louis school district, but now I have the opportunity to become a Partnership Director with UnboundEd, and I work with districts and state leaders and building leaders across the country and really thinking through what their journey can look like with UnboundEd. My partner in this chat today is Saruchi, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Saruchi Keenheel, and I live in the Philadelphia area. I'm UnboundEd's VP of Program Implementation, and what that means is that I support our partner school systems with applying and actualizing UnboundEd's frameworks and concepts within their local context. So we want to start out today grounding our conversation in the why for our work. And with that, we want to share our vision. So UnboundEd's vision is to empower educators to eliminate the predictability of student outcomes by race, language, and socioeconomic status through evidence-informed, engaging, affirming, and meaningful grade-level instruction so that all students succeed academically. And that is quite a big charge. There's a lot of elements that need to come together successfully in order for us to have the type of transformative effect on school systems that our students deserve, and the stakes are really high. And so that's the reason why we focus on not just providing professional learning, but supporting with the implementation and the actualization of our frameworks within the school systems. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jen now, who will speak about our approach and how that connects to furthering this vision.
Absolutely. Thank you, Saruchi. UnboundEd's approach to learning is really grounded in the intersectionality of grade level standards, content, aligned curriculum, and also educational equity. It's really through this intersectionality and this approach that we strive to eliminate the predictability of who succeeds and who fails, of students' outcomes by race, language, and socioeconomic status. Our commitment to every learner is really what unites us. UnboundEd works side by side with teachers, coaches, principals, district, and state leaders to ensure that every student has access to grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful, or GLEAM, instruction. Our hypothesis is that by cultivating the mindsets, knowledge, and skills, we can break the predictability of historic achievement patterns so that all kids can thrive. During our time together in this chat today, you may hear our panelists refer to GLEAM instruction. And I just want to elevate that this does stand for grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful. Over the course of the next 55 minutes or so, we'll be discussing the challenges facing educational leaders, as well as the journey of two leaders towards equitable outcomes for all of the students in their systems. Each leader will dive into their own journey separately, and then we'll come together for a time with the full panel discussion. So with that housekeeping out of the way, we're going to dive in. I'm honored to be sharing this conversation today with leaders from two school systems. Springfield Public Schools, which is the public school district in Springfield, Massachusetts, and Synergy Academies, which is a charter network in Los Angeles, California. These two organizations are on opposite sides of the country, and are different in many ways. But one commonality is that they both wanted all the students in their systems to achieve at high levels and leaned in on their partnership with UnboundEd to reach their PD goals. We're kicking off our conversation today with Darcia Milner, and she's the Chief Schools Officer in Springfield Public Schools. Welcome, Darcia. Thanks for
Thank
joining us
you.
today.
Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
Darcia, can we start off with you telling us just a little bit about yourself and your role in Springfield?
Absolutely. Again, as Ms. Crazen said, my name is Darcia Milner. I'm the Chief Schools Officer for Zone 1 in Springfield Public Schools. We have approximately 34 elementary schools within our district, and I am responsible to support and supervise half of those elementary schools, so approximately 17. We have a total of 66 schools in our district, an enrollment of around 24,000. These numbers are a little bit off, and we serve pre-K through 12. We're a public school district. A huge part of our population, as far as students go, 69% are Hispanic, 17% are African American. For our subgroup populations, our English language learners, which we call our second language learners or our multi-language students, are at 17%. Keeping in mind that we support those students who speak Spanish, that's our number one second language. Somali would be our first language would be Spanish. Our second language would be Somali, and our third would be Swahili in our district. Students with disabilities, we're at 26.8%, which is very, very high. We're above the state when it comes to the number of students with disabilities that we support. Our district is the third largest district in the state of Massachusetts. Keeping in mind, we teeter-totter between second and third. Worcester would be the second, and the difference between Worcester and Springfield are 400 students. We're very low-income students. We're very high in our percentage and our high needs in Springfield Public Schools.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. As we start our conversation today, Darcia, I'd love for you to tell us about Springfield Public Schools and the challenges the district was facing before partnering with UnboundEd. And also curious, what initially drew you to UnboundEd as a potential solution for your needs?
Okay, so let me just start with what drew us to UnboundEd. Actually, I was approached by the director of academics as she felt UnboundEd's ideology was in alignment of what we were trying to accomplish here in Springfield. It was closely aligned to our asset-based approach, and we were trying to support our students as we had outlined in our strategic plan and our portrait of a graduate work. And we felt it would also assist us in our diversity, inclusion, and racial equity work that we were doing within the district. Ultimately, the challenges that we faced as a district, no different than any other district, was that our data and our classroom observations did not reveal success, true success. And our instruction wasn't supportive. It wasn't totally inclusive of all students. We as a district, again, as I said, we had put into our strategic plan that would focus on culturally responsive instruction. People barely knew what that was. We had professional development from Khalees Warnham. We also did some book studies, Culturally Responsive Instruction by Zaretta Hammond. And for whatever reason, we weren't seeing this professional development, these book studies, these conversations on the topic weren't necessarily manifesting itself in student outcomes. And we, again, like I said, like many other districts, sort of fell into the traps and tropes of addressing equity. We did the whole district coverage with a program, PD program, and we moved on without truly building capacity. So there was like coverage, there was like a blanket approach. And then we did the spray and pray. We gave everybody this sort of professional development, if you will, exposure, some conversation. There was this was throughout the district, and we all prayed that it would stick and we would see some sort of change. Again, we continue to not see our attempts manifest itself in student outcomes. And we also found ourselves in that boomerang equity trap. where we do all this work, we spend all this money on time, resources around the topic, but there's no follow through, no follow up. And people were reverting back to the status quo. So we as a district felt like UnboundEd could actually help us get there. They could sort of give us some firm ground to stand on and support us and really develop us in operationalizing that equity focused instruction as they had already talked about. So that was the purpose. We actually thought that UnboundEd could actually support the students of Springfield, and those were the challenges that we faced as a district.
All right, thank you for that. That context is really helping for us in flagging what initially drew you to a partnership with UnboundEd. I'd love to hear a little bit about what your professional learning journey has looked like while you've worked with UnboundEd.
So initially, as like I said, I was approached by the academic instructional officer. So we actually had taken around 15 individuals to Anaheim, California in February of 2023 to a conference, a Standards Institute conference that UnboundEd had facilitated. And the only word that I could use to describe that experience was profound. By the time we were done with the conference, on the last day, the group of 15 from our district were able to sit down and kind of sort of come up with a way to start this work within our district, and just kind of sort of come up with a way to start a progression of what our next steps would be based on the information that we have received and already knowing what our deficits were in our district. After that, we obviously came back. We shared this information with our superintendent, and he was totally on board. It was definitely in alignment with what we were trying to accomplish as a district, and had to some degree some success, but very little, especially around this topic of equity focused instruction. So then after that, we had a 2-day summit in August of the following year, of that year, I'm sorry, and a 2-day summit, and where we had over 130 of our leaders. When I say leaders, I mean administration, content directors, supervisors. Everyone was in attendance to be a part of the professional development that UnboundEd had to deliver around its GLEAM practices. We then engaged in September. We decided that we needed to go further. We needed to go deeper. We did like a survey of our educators and folks in the district, and folks were on board for the cohort program because we wanted to know, how do we operationalize this within our district? What more information do our folks need? Because again, it was a 2-day summit, so it sort of left the palate wanting more around the GLEAM practices. So we decided to go ahead with the cohort program. We had 60 participants come on board, 13 schools, and there were 4 district supervisors a part of that program as well. The whole process with the cohort program, again, profound as well. We were able to unpack GLEAM, the best practices. We were able to come together and address some of the concerns that we had as a district, and kind of sort of share our own personal experiences around diversity, inclusion, and racial equity, or a lack thereof. We were able to do some cross-pollination with other districts within from other places. We were able to talk with them. So we were introduced to the cohort program. We unpacked GLEAM. We were able to observe for GLEAM. We were able to look at videos of teaching and instruction, and we were able to use the actual tool and sort of do an analysis of what we saw, what we didn't see. We actually talked about norming our own problem of practice within our district, and we developed our goals. After coming up with a problem of practice, we kind of created an action plan. What are our next steps? So this is what the problem is. This is what is hindering us from this equity focused instruction. what do we do? How do we support our educators? How do we hold them accountable? First of all, how do we support them? And then how do we hold them accountable?
I really loved that word that you said was so powerful, profound. You said that about Standards Institute, you said that about cohort. And as a previous district leader, that was our experience as well. At Standards Institute, it felt profound in our learning journey.
And
As-
I'm sorry, Jen, I also
ahead.
neglected to also say that in our district, a part of the journey, our professional learning journey, is also doing a book study on
Mm.
Dr. Lacey's book as well. And we've had other schools kind of do some other things with UnboundEd. We've also had at least 4 schools attend the Leadership Institute. I'm sorry, I didn't mention Dr. Lacey's book, Justice Seekers. So we have a great relationship with UnboundEd. UnboundEd pushes us to kind of really dig deep, unpack our this implicit biases, all these different things. And again, I can get into that much later on, but kind of sort of what I loved about UnboundEd is they provided a safe place, and they understood that there was different points for all of the participants, and it provided a safe place for us to kind of unpack those and address paradigms and beliefs and debilitating practices and things of that nature, and how we would get better. So I appreciate that from UnboundEd.
Thank you for that. One piece that you've mentioned and you really elevated was cohort. And I'd really love to hear just quickly about the experiences of your leaders while they were participating in cohort. You elevated a few minutes ago that they were able to identify a problem of practice and, consider systems and structures along with that. What else would you say that they came out of that experience for your leaders?
I think the aha moment for most, based on their feedback, was they were unaware that there were low expectations of our population. They were unaware that they were actually contributing to some of the debilitating practices. And what they wanted from this cohort program was, and UnboundEd did provide it, was how do I coach? How do I coach using the instructional look-fors, using the instructional observation tool to ensure that these equity focused instruction that's happening in my school. So the cohort program sort of gave us a starting point. It gave us a place to go. And that led for the district to actually have meetings with our cohort participants and actually going into those buildings and them working with their instructional leadership teams and developing them. So the cohort program, I would say, created champions of the GLEAM best practices and of the work, and developing them in the sessions that we did attend. And I believe it was 10 sessions that was attended. They were the champions, and they started to create and develop teams within their schools themselves. So I would have to say the takeaway would be the leading and the coaching for them, what needed to happen in order for us to see true change in pedagogy in our schools.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is so important there, and really building up that capacity of our leaders is the lever to really impact that change as they move into their buildings. So on the screen right now, we see the vision, mission, and core values for Springfield. I'd like to give the audience just a few seconds to read the screen, think about a couple of the keywords before we dive into this. So, Darcia, as I read through these components, I definitely see a lot of parallels between the mission and vision of UnboundEd and these pieces that Springfield has really elevated. Can you share maybe just one example of how UnboundEd has helped shift the mindset or practices within the district?
Um, I would have to say, ultimately, we've used UnboundEd and it's in the components of GLEAM, we've aligned it and we've made it a part of our school improvement plans.
Mm.
And in those school improvement plans, our principals and educators have to identify an area. There are two priorities: purposeful teaching and culturally responsive instruction. And we've managed to incorporate the GLEAM components within those two priority areas. So educators have to actually look at what's our focus based on what the data is telling us around what our teachers need, how our students are performing, what exactly do we want to address and approach, and what supports do we need from the district to be successful in this. So we've ultimately tried to figure out the biggest priority for us was how do we operationalize these GLEAM best practices within our district. So we've aligned them to our learning walks, as I said, our school improvement plans. We've also had further conversations, with other stakeholders around GLEAM and the components of GLEAM and how we've incorporated it into our school improvement plans and our strategic plan itself. The equitable instructional look-fors has become a part of our norm and our day-to-day around our, whether they're district learning walks, whether there's school learning walks, whether we're talking about PLCs. It's aligned itself to our asset-based learning and our portrait of a graduate. And PLG, the screen you just saw in PLG, we talk about reimagining schooling. And a big part of that is looking at our policies and our best practices and through an equity lens. UnboundEd has supported us. And when I say not just looking at GLEAM, but looking at everything SPS across the district. And I'll just give you another example. We have decided to look at grading. We know that grading is very subjective, and Joe Feldman Grading for Equity talks about passive oppression in education, and we know that grading is a big part of that. So UnboundEd has actually opened the door for us to look at a myriad of things, and whether we had already looked at it and whether we were doing it correctly, or really digging deep in how do we best support our students in belief systems. We talked about high expectations. We talked about belief systems of our students. And in looking at grading, we've decided to pilot. We've done a lot of work around grading in Springfield Public Schools, and we've decided to pilot a standards-based grading program because we know that grading, there's a lot of implicit bias. It's very punitive when it comes to our students of color. So I could go on and on and on. I know you said give you one example, but we've incorporated GLEAM and the ideology that GLEAM presents in all that we do and everything.
Darcia, I really appreciate the passion that you have for the work that you do. And I'm so impressed with the integration of the learning that you all in Springfield have done through the learning you've done through UnboundEd to your systems and policies and practices within the district. So thanks for walking us through that today. We're going to dive in a little bit more deeply in just a little bit with Darcia, but now I'd like to welcome to the conversation Rhonda Deomampo, who is the CEO and Superintendent at Synergy Academies. Thanks for joining us today, Rhonda.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me today.
I'd love for you to share us just a little bit about yourself and your role at Synergy.
Yeah, well, again, my name is Rhonda Deomampo. I have the honor of serving as the CEO and Superintendent of Synergy Academies. We are a small charter school organization in Los Angeles. A little bit about me. I started my career in education just about 20 years ago as a teacher in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And then soon after, joined Synergy as a second grade teacher in 2006. So Synergy is celebrating our 20th year.
Congrats.
Thanks. I've been there for 18 of those years. So have really been privileged to see us grow from, what started as just a really small elementary school founded by 2 LA Unified teachers. To today, we have 3 schools, elementary, middle, and high school, serving over 1,300 students. all the way from TK through high school graduation. Our schools are all located in South Los Angeles. You see some stats up there. About 98% of our students receive free or qualify for free and reduced price lunch. About 20% are English learners. About 50% are redesignated, former English learners. And then about 14% are students with disabilities, which that percentage is pretty consistent with the overall Los Angeles percentage as well.
All right. Well, as we start our conversation and learn about Synergy today, I'd love for you to tell us about some of the challenges your network was facing before partnering with UnboundEd, and what initially drew you to a partnership with UnboundEd as a potential solution for your needs.
Yeah, sure. We have been working with UnboundEd for a couple of years now. So when I think back to where we were spring of 2022, I don't know, in some cases it feels like it was so long ago, and in some cases the last 2 years have flown by. But that 21-22 school year for us in Los Angeles was our first year back in person following the lockdowns due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And, we were, challenged with all that came with returning in person. For us, that meant masking and COVID testing every week and all of that, but also really concerned about what the impact of that loss of in-person instructional time had on academic progress. And so, for our students, it was for most of them more than a year on Zoom. So that was definitely top of mind. Similar, and I heard a lot of parallels from our friends in Springfield, Massachusetts. We were also having a lot of conversations around educational equity, culturally responsive teaching. We had also done an organization-wide book study with Zaretta Hammond's book, Culturally Relevant Teaching in the Brain. But I think the conversations were moving towards like, okay, we understand this. How do we put it into practice? What does this look like in our classrooms and in our school systems? And then I think, the other thing we were thinking a lot about was, depending on the subject or grade level, the lack of standards-aligned curriculum and teachers needing to create curriculum, lessons, assessments, hoping that they were aligned to the standards and at grade level.
All right. Thanks for providing that context for us and really highlighting what initially drew you to a partnership with UnboundEd.
Well, I don't know. I think I defined the challenges we were facing.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
But I don't know that I really talked about that. We had an awareness of UnboundEd at the time. We had sent several instructional leaders to Relay Graduate School of Education's PD program, a similar like year-long cohort program. And, as, that series focused on a lot of observation and feedback, data dialogues. And I think as the conversation really moved more towards, when you're examining data and getting ready to reteach, how do you know which piece of the standard to reteach? And really the importance of not only teachers, but instructional leaders, internalizing standards, really unpacking standards. Folks said, and we were kind of grappling with like, okay, how do we do this? How do we carve out the time? And folks said, well, have you been to Standards Institute? Like, you need to go to Standards Institute. And I think we had looked at, this was before the pandemic. I think we had looked it up and it was sold out. It was hard to get a ticket. And so it had been in the back of our mind. And so in spring 2022 was the first in-person Standards Institute. I think it was in Las Vegas. And we, similar to what Darcia's experience, we sent a team. It felt pretty large for us. It was probably about 12 folks. And they just came back with very positive feedback. So that is what drew us and kind of how we started our journey.
That lit the fire for sure. That definitely resonates with me as well. So you've started us out with the journey now, thinking through the initial experience with Standards Institute. Walk us through briefly what your professional learning journey has looked like while you've been working with UnboundEd.
Yeah. So, the feedback from folks who went to that first Standards Institute for us, they kind of came back and said, I think this is what we've been looking for, right? The GLEAM framework seemed to put into words and into practice the things we had been looking for. They were so inspired by the keynote speakers and the quality of the overall program and facilitation. And we already had a time blocked off for teacher professional development that June, right after the school year ended. And so we, maybe had some initial conversations about, okay, well, how can we use that time to bring GLEAM to our system? And it turned out that the next Standards Institute was exactly that week. And it was in Los Angeles, 15 minutes from our schools. And so we made the decision to send all of our teachers, all of our admin, all instructional leaders, which was a big investment of time and resources to do that. But folks felt like it's such a powerful learning experience that everyone should get that same experience. And I think that the timing and the logistics worked out well for us to be able to do that. So we sent a huge group to that Standards Institute. And then we're ready for, okay, what's next? So we joined the cohort program. I'll say for us, because we had just gone to Standards Institute. So some of us had gone twice in the last 6 months. A lot of the learning was just reinforcing what we had already learned. But I think it was a good way to kind of keep it front of mind. And we added on the learning walk, which was a really powerful experience as well, where a team from Unbound came out and we got to do observations across all 3 of our schools with all of our instructional leaders. And so in this current school year, we opted to sign up for 2 GLEAM inventories, which are basically the same thing, I think, as the learning walk. So a team from UnboundEd came out in the fall and again this spring with the goal this year of building internal capacity so that we're not reliant on someone from the outside to come in and lead those conversations, that we can do those on our own. And the final thing I'll say is, because we feel like that experience at Standards Institute is so impactful, that we are trying to send all of our new staff as they onboard with us to Standards Institute as well. So, folks who have joined in the last year are signed up to go to one of the sessions this summer to really, keep the momentum going and make sure everyone gets that experience as well.
So you mentioned that your engagement with the GLEAM inventories was really impactful.
Yeah.
And I have a quote up on the screen of a piece of information you shared with us in preparing for this today, which I thought was very powerful. I'd love to hear about the experience your team had while participating in the GLEAM inventory and takeaways that your leaders were able to then move into action.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the most impactful things is just dedicating that time to professional development of our leaders, right? I think having our entire leadership team, that's all principals, assistant principals, director of SPED, director of EL programs, myself, our CAO, our instructional coaches, all come together and spend 3 full days. Now, this is it is not something easy to do for, school leaders to leave their buildings and leave their campuses for that period of time. But I think the ability for us to really spend that time together, walking through classrooms, was very helpful. And I also think the team from Unbound, who came out to facilitate, was helpful as well, because they, in going on that journey with us, helped us to see that it's okay to, walk in a classroom, recognize what's working well, and also what work still needs to be done. And then the second part of that is helping us to prioritize what should the next step be. And so I think after each learning walk or GLEAM inventory, process, we walked away with, okay, here are the next actions we're going to take, whether it's targeted in teacher professional development, whether it's our instructional coordinators having some targeted conversations around planning, right? Whether there are system changes that need to be made. One of the things that came out of the first cycle with the learning walk and the cohort was updates that we made to essentially our teacher evaluations, what we call our professional growth plans, but aligning teachers' annual goals to the GLEAM framework, right? Making sure it all connects and ties together.
Yeah, no, that's smart, really. So on the screen here, we see the vision and mission of Synergy Academies. And I'll read them briefly, starting with the vision. At Synergy, high quality instruction engages students in grade level learning, affirms who they are, and prepares them to excel academically, socially, and civically. And the mission is that we work together as a community to disrupt educational inequity through high quality instruction, access, and support so all students can excel. And as I read these statements, similar to what I noticed with Darcy, I see a lot of familiar language and parallels between the mission and vision of UnboundEd and those at Synergy Academies. Can you share maybe one specific example of how UnboundEd helps shift the mindset and practices within your organization?
Yeah, sure. Well, I first I'll explain, I think the reason you see such familiar language is that we just updated our mission and vision statements about this time last spring. And we went through a process with the task force and got a lot of input and feedback. And I think due to all the work we had been doing with UnboundEd, some of that language about engaging students in grade level learning, that was very top of mind for folks. And we wanted to make sure that those things are not just intentions, but they're codified in our mission and vision statements that we go back to, right? I think one of the things that's been helpful is being able to utilize GLEAM as an anchor, to anchor different things to. And in this way, embedding some of that language in our mission and vision statements that also serve as those anchors as well. I think this is one of the things Darcia mentioned that they are working on also is the shift to standards-based grading. And we also have been working on a shift to standards-based grading. And so when you mention mindsets, it definitely comes to my mind that takes a huge mindset shift too, right? Reconsidering how we grade, why we grade, what grades mean. These are things like mindset shifts for both kids and adults. And so I think for us, being able to anchor some of those conversations in GLEAM was really helpful in that transition, right? When we're talking about giving kids the opportunity to do work at grade level, right? That's not just important, or I guess it takes on a different importance when grading is also aligned to those grade level standards too, right? There's a necessity in doing that. When we think about engagement, it's more than just raising your hand and collecting participation points that go into a participation grade, right? It's intellectual engagement. And for you as the teacher to kind of make a mindset shift from viewing assignments as due, finished, done, right? Check that box, to viewing learning on a continuum where you are thinking about what feedback can I give to this student to help them along that learning journey, right? And that there's opportunities to learn and relearn and assess and reassess along the way, I think are really key. So I would say that that is one example.
Jen, can I just pop in for a moment? Because I want to speak about what you've heard from our two district leaders representing the partnerships with Springfield and with Synergy, that the level of strategic implementation that took place was very much due to a lot of factors, but primary in my mind behind all of that is that there are these two leaders that have spoken to you who have driven that work forward. And that type of a system level driver is critical for the success of this type of implementation that is so strategic as what you just heard. So, you heard them talk about prioritizing this work in relation to the strategic planning that they're doing within their systems, prioritizing, resources and setting goals and ensuring different efforts are all leading towards the same approach. Things like change management. When you're talking about transforming a system in this way, change management is huge, and that is something that Darcia and Rhonda were both very instrumental in managing. It's everything from identifying readiness, right? Like not everyone is going to be ready in the same way at the same time. So just thinking about what is our order of operations. There isn't one uniform prescribed journey for how to go through UnboundEd's programs. And you heard a little bit about that there were some, differences in how they approach the work. And just like identifying which change agents are ready to send through a certain professional learning program first, and then who kind of follows those thought leaders and, continues to build the momentum of focusing on this work. You heard about aligning existing systems, creating new systems in alignment with GLEAM. So things like in Darcia's example, the school improvement plans were linked to GLEAM. You heard about and saw Synergy and, doing a mission and vision rewrite in alignment with GLEAM. And bottom line, just delivering a compelling rationale for why this work is not just like a flavor of the month, but why it's something that we're going to apply. This equity lens is something that we're going to apply to everything we do. It's not just a new initiative on top of everything else, but it is the central instructional focus, and then other initiatives connect back to that GLEAM framework. So I just wanted to, I don't want to miss the opportunity to say that it's not an accident that this level of strategic implementation happened. It is very much due to having strong drivers of this work at the system level in Darcia and in Rhonda. And also just wanted to thank them for that, because that has made this partnership so successful and so fun, quite honestly.
Thank you so much for elevating that, Suruchi. I think that's such an important point. And for sure, we want to honor all the work that Darcia and Rhonda have done on the behalf of your systems. It's been amazing. So now I'm going to move us forward to more of a group discussion. And these final two questions are going to be for both of you, Darcia and Rhonda, and Suruchi, definitely chime in. We love to hear your thoughts as well. So I'm going to ask you for a moment to look back and think about your journeys with UnboundEd. What would you say were the most valuable aspects of your partnership as you've been working with UnboundEd?
You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead. Kick us off.
Well, I think that, I know that UnboundEd created a platform for not only for the district to be able to have those difficult conversations, but they were safe spaces. They had the expertise. What we had done at a more novice level within our district, because we didn't have experts in this equity conversation. We were able to partner with them, and again, we were able to have those difficult conversations and creating those safe spaces, understanding that there were different entry points for individuals. And UnboundEd actually confirmed that I was not going to be the sole equity warrior for the Springfield Public School District, that this was going to be a collaboration. And I wasn't. It was just something definitely that, because we had a number of individuals who wanted to do this work and we just didn't know how moving forward. The partnership has really developed the change agents that we needed to see change within our best practices, our classroom practices, and especially around affirming. And when we talk about grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful, they really supported us in really digging deep in what that looks like and what that feels like for our students. And they've provided us with different resources that we're able to use. And the conversation, there's not one school that you can go in, and whether they've been a part of the cohort program or not, that those conversations aren't happening relative to GLEAM instruction and expectations for our students. So the partnership has been very, very valuable for us. And I mean, I could talk forever. There's so many things that are happening within our district, but I would have to say that they have really held us to the fire around maybe toward when addressing things around equity and looking through that equity lens across the board. So we appreciate them for that and their expertise. We just can't get enough of it.
Yeah. When I think about what's most valuable, I mean, and reflecting on our journey over the last couple of years, I think for us, starting with Standards Institute was key. Being able to give all teachers and instructional leaders that same profound learning opportunity really helped to create a common language and common practices across our school. But I think it's not only that, it's like how we followed up on it too. Continuing the work through the cohort program and the learning walks, but also continuing the work through seeing what practices we have within the system that could also be centered around GLEAM. So we mentioned, a couple examples already. And I think those are all good examples of the way GLEAM has become sort of a central instructional focus and something that we can ground different initiatives in as well. I know Saruchi says, like, you don't want it to feel like, okay, this year we're doing GLEAM, next year we're doing standards-based grading, next year we're doing restorative practices, right? When there's so much connection and all of those are different pieces to achieving the same goal and doing the same work.
Absolutely. I think threading that needle for folks and making everything feel as cohesive and connected as possible is really key, which to Saruchi's point really is why the work you all have done in your systems is so key. Having that key leader to drive that work is so important. So, based on your experience, what advice would you give other schools or districts or networks that are considering a partnership with UnboundEd?
I would encourage other districts to review, do their research, review the array of support that UnboundEd has to offer, because it's not a one size fits all. People are in different places. To really look at what they have to offer to determine the best steps for them in this work moving forward. Like I said at the onset of my presentation, was that we had done so many different things. We had covered the topic. That was the so what. The now what for us was UnboundEd. They were able to provide us with the necessary tools to kind of dig a little bit deeper, create systems and operationalize GLEAM best practices. That's where I always say UnboundEd was where the rubber met the road for us. Have we arrived? No, we haven't. Is the work happening? Yes, it is. And is it happening in a more comprehensive way than it ever has? This is year 33 for me in the district. Absolutely. So I would say definitely look at the array of the myriad of entry points that they provide for addressing equity in their array of support that they have to offer.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I guess I would add to start first with doing an inventory of your own district, your own system, determining what your needs are, what your goals are, what your internal capacity is to meet those goals. And then take a look at like everything Unbound has to offer so that you can really be strategic. I think I heard a lot of commonality in our journeys in two very different systems on opposite ends of the country, but there were also important differences too. And I think that's right, that there's not necessarily a one size fits all approach. And I think one of the nice things is there are different entry points for folks to learn about GLEAM, to partner with Unbound. And the only other thing I would add is, as you go through that journey, to consider in what ways could GLEAM have an impact not only in individual classrooms, but in your school system as well, right? What are the other systems that support the work teachers are doing every day, whether it's instructional coaching, teacher evaluations, the mission statement, that also can be aligned to the principles of GLEAM.
And the advice that I would offer is that if you are truly interested in transforming a system, keeping in mind that there is no one magic bullet. And so, that there are different elements that we need to work through, hence the different program options. They're all designed to have a different purpose in the journey. And the other thing is to keep in mind that this type of change does not happen overnight. So, when implementing a new intervention, 2 to 4 years is really what research shows it takes for that type of implementation to happen fully with sustainability in mind. We're talking about transforming a system. It's more on the longer end of that spectrum, that kind of the 4 years. So really just managing expectations around how long this work takes and approaching it in a really strategic way, as you've heard from our partners today.
Well, thank you so much, Darcia and Rhonda, for sharing a bit of your journey today. Suruchi, thanks so much for adding into the conversation. And Jignasha, thanks for helping behind the scenes. In education, we are always learning and growing. And I know that I actually learned so much today from both of you and your journeys and how you thought through the work so intentionally. I really loved hearing about how you moved towards and continue to move towards equitable learning for all your students and how UnboundEd was a part of that. I know that this work is never completely done, just as Darcia mentioned, and so I really look forward to partnering and hearing next steps in your journey as you continue to move forward. As we heard today, Standards Institute was a powerful lever in both of these systems for shifting mindsets and beliefs and really beginning their journey. Standards Institute is a 4-day immersive professional learning opportunity, and it is truly profound, as in Darcia's words. For my team as a district leader, when we went, it transformed our thinking, our direction for instruction, and how we needed to move forward for our students. We have 2 opportunities to engage in this learning over the summer, and I think Jignasha is going to put into the chat a little bit more information. Denver is rapidly coming up in about a month, and we still have a few seats available there. We'd love for you to join us. And then we also are hosting it again in Washington, D.C. So you're able to go ahead and go to our website to get more information about that. If you would like to learn more about any of the programs that you heard about today, or just have a problem that you're grappling with and you want to partner with somebody in thinking through how to even begin a professional learning journey, we would love to work with you on that. On the screen, you see my colleagues and their contact information in the parts of the country that we each represent and support. We are all former educators. We have been doing this work. We deeply believe in the work of the organization and want to support you in working towards your goal of equitable outcomes for all students. So we would love to work with you on that. Reach out to us and we're happy to schedule some time to chat. So as we close out today, thank you so much to the panelists, Saruchi, Jignasha. I really appreciate each one of you taking time out of your day to support this conversation. Thanks for everybody who joined us in this webinar to learn about the professional learning journey. And we wish you well and hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.